Okay, welcome to Westminster, and I'm glad to say I've got Ben Habib back with me. Ben, how are you?
Morning, Michael. Very well indeed, thank you. How are you?
Good, man. Yeah, I want to speak to you again because I saw that you co-authored a piece for The Telegraph entitled "Boris Can Show His Brexit Zeal at Last by Ripping Up His Old Brino Deal. Rather than Brexit in name only, the PM needs to resolve to neutralise his withdrawal agreement and Northern Ireland Protocol." Ben, can you just elaborate and explain this a bit more to people?
Yeah, okay. So a lot of people won't realise, thinking that Brexit was done on the 31st of January, that actually the withdrawal agreement that we signed or became effective on the 31st of January is one that effectively partitions the United Kingdom. It leaves Northern Ireland in the European Union Customs Union. And the reason Boris did that was because of all the problems that Theresa May had over the backstop, the arguments that you couldn't have a border down between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, you know, an argument that Remainers had managed to promote very successfully and effectively cow Theresa May's government into this backstop, which kept the United Kingdom locked in the European Union, potentially in perpetuity. So Boris's answer to that was actually to carve off Northern Ireland. And it's something which I was screaming about back in, as were you actually, Michael, back in October last year and ever since. But people weren't listening. People wanted to get Brexit done. They believed in the Prime Minister. They wanted to move forward. And this kind of went under the radar that Northern Ireland is going to be left in the customs union with the European Union, that there's going to be state aid laws applicable to European Union state aid laws applicable to Northern Ireland. They would have to comply with sanitary and phytosanitary regulations. Their excise duties and VAT laws would be set by the European Union, and they would be subject to the ultimate supremacy of the ECJ, which is the European Court of Justice. All of this has kind of gone under the radar, and notwithstanding all the drum banging that I've been doing, and I've become a kind of specialist in the Northern Irish Protocol for reasons that I think must be born slightly out of an obsessive compulsive disorder. But, you know, I just see it as an undermining of the UK. It's a wedge right down the middle of the United Kingdom. Never in history has a country actually willingly partitioned itself in an international treaty. You might see that happen at the end of a war if you've lost the war, but you wouldn't expect a country to put a partition down itself. And that's what the withdrawal agreement does between Northern Ireland and Great Britain. And so the UK effectively has a border down the middle of the Irish Sea.
Now, you've talked about in your Telegraph piece, the proposed internal market bill. You said it appears to be a huge step in the right direction. Can you just explain that a bit more?
Well, when I was writing the piece, which was yesterday morning, it looked like the Internal Markets Bill, which is yet to be published, by the way.
Yes,
it
published
looked like
Wednesday.
Published tomorrow. So it was described as a bill that would prevent Northern Ireland from being cut off in the way that I've just described. A bill that would require UK courts to find against the Northern Irish Protocol and to ensure that goods coming across from Northern Ireland to Great Britain would not require to go through any kind of border, any kind of customs control, and that state aid laws of the European Union wouldn't apply. Now, we still haven't seen the actual bill, but it's becoming clearer now that the intention of the bill was not what I thought it was yesterday morning. Actually, the intention of the bill is quite limited. It's just to make sure that state aid laws that will continue to apply to Northern Ireland will not apply in the rest of the United Kingdom. There was a risk that companies that operate both in Northern Ireland and Great Britain could somehow find themselves caught by European Union law because they had one leg in both camps, as it were. And this latest bill, it appears this morning, seems to be limited merely to getting rid of that risk and to prevent customs declarations for goods coming from Northern Ireland to Great Britain. So in itself, actually, it's not what it was first drummed up to be, which was this big, rewriting of the withdrawal agreement to make sure the United Kingdom wasn't going to have a border down the Irish Sea. That border still remains. even if this bill goes through. And it's not a huge improvement, I'm afraid to say.
So what do you want to see done then in terms of the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol? What would you like to see Boris do?
Well, what I wanted Boris to do last October was to describe his deal accurately, which was a bad deal, not the fantastic deal that he said it was, to describe it as a bad deal, but the best that he could have got at that time. And I grant that to him because he was in a very difficult position with his own party and his own parliamentarians working against the national interest. But he should have really set that deal aside when he won the election. He didn't. He signed it. And now, the minute he signed it, by the way, I moved from asking him not to sign it to repudiating it. And that remains my position. He must now repudiate the withdrawal agreement. I made a speech, I think, in late February, early March at the Bruges group, saying that that was the only way he could go now. He had to be Trumpian. You recall when Trump realized that NAFTA simply wasn't working for the United States. He didn't go about, tying himself up in knots. He just said NAFTA no longer exists, and they had to rewrite it. And that's what Boris needs to do. He needs to have the political will to repudiate the entire withdrawal agreement, which has, by the way, nothing good in it for the United Kingdom. There's not a single clause in that agreement to which I can point and say that is in the UK's best interest. It's all in the EU's favour.
I just want to give you a statement that's literally just come out just before we started chatting from Sir Bernard Jenkin MP, chairman of the ERG steering group. And he said this. He said, if we don't reach a deal with the EU, Brexit is not done until the UK government succeeds in its determination to assert its own interpretation of the withdrawal agreement. He says that if the EU is unwilling to do a deal with us, there are two options. The first is to enact a domestic legislation that will largely nullify the direct effect and direct applicability of EU law. We have the mandate and majority to do this. Secondly, he says, if the EU insists on an unreasonable interpretation of the withdrawal agreement, the UK must stand ready to repudiate it. I hope it is not necessary, but if it is the only way to achieve UK prosperity and the kind of sovereign independence which is the democratic right of any nation recognised under the UN Charter, then so be it. And most other nations would respect us for that. What's your reaction to that, Ben?
Well, I think it's, horses, gates and bolted come to mind. I wish the ERG had spoken up about the huge deficiencies in the withdrawal agreement before it was actually enacted. You might recall they were all banging the drum saying what a brilliant job Boris had done getting it reopened, getting the Northern Irish Protocol agreed, getting Brexit done. And now they're waking up, at long last, they're waking up to the pernicious effects of that agreement. On point one of what he said, which is that we should pass domestic law, if necessary, to undermine it, that doesn't work. Article 4 of the withdrawal agreement requires British courts to set aside any domestic legislation which countermands the terms of the withdrawal agreement. So passing domestic legislation is not good enough. The only way out of this, Michael, now, the only genuine, clean way out is to repudiate the withdrawal agreement. And they shouldn't waste time waiting for whether or not we get a deal. We're never going to get a deal good enough to nullify the ill effects of the Northern Irish Protocol. We need to just repudiate that agreement. We were forced into it under duress. We had our own parliamentarians, some might argue acting in a treasonous manner. I don't want to use hyperbolic terms. But many regard the way that our parliamentarians were acting last year as treasonous. And we were definitely in a state of duress when the Prime Minister agreed that deal. And the only clean way out is to repudiate. And I agree with the ERG that actually every nation in the world will have great sympathy for the UK if they do it. In fact, they'll be hugely encouraged that the United Kingdom has had the courage to stand up, be counted, do what it said it would do for its people and enact the will of the referendum result of 2016 at last.
And finally, Ben, Michel Barnier has come back to London, another round of negotiations. Where do you assess the probability of us having a no deal outcome versus a deal being done?
Well, this is what I think is going to happen. Boris had first said, if we haven't got a deal by the end of June, we'll go WTO. He then moved that to September. He's now saying 15th October. We're not going to get a deal before the 15th of October. And it doesn't matter whether the European Council has time to approve it or not. What will happen is that we'll have lots of drums being banged. Both sides will be playing political rhetoric to their base support camps. We'll go past the 15th of October. There'll be a deal done at the last minute. The European Council will be summoned to an emergency meeting. The European Parliament will be summoned to an emergency meeting. They will approve the deal, and Boris will champion it as a fantastic deal. It probably won't be a fantastic deal. We'll have to read it at the time, but he'll champion it as a fantastic deal. And the European Union will champion it as a fantastic deal. So I still think, in a nutshell, there'll be a deal done at the 11th hour and the 59th minute, after both sides have banged this sort of political rhetorical drum to make their base camps feel that they've done their very best in their national and supranational interests.
We'll wait and see. But look, Ben, great to speak to you again. Lots more, I'm sure, is going to happen over the next few months. We'll talk again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thanks.